Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Pioneers Paint, which is being hosted for the Virtual Connections Club. Now today we will be making a sunrise beachy silhouette. You will want to have a large brush. I recommend also having a medium-sized brush. And for our quote that we're going to be writing at the end, 60 years of pioneers, anything is possible. You're going to want to have one of these fine tip brushes because it gets a little tricky by the time that you're writing out your quotes. So today we will be using the following colors. Now these are paints I have at home. They are from my Artscape, but you could use any other form of acrylic paint. That's what we're using today. So we have the following here. This is ultramarine, dark blue essentially, titanium white, crimson red, yellow orange, and plain mild yellow. So we use an 8x10 canvas at Pioneers Paint. I'm going to be using a slightly larger one so that you can pick up all of the details, and so that if you had attended our first event and you felt lost at all, you can get a close-up version that hopefully will translate to even more beautiful paintings. So we want to begin by wetting our brush, and it's important to make sure, especially if they're new brushes, that you massage the tips and make sure that they're not hard at all. You want your brush to be soft and able to pick up, an ample amount of paint. So my brush is good to go. I've wet it and I've loosened up those bristles. I've dabbed it on my napkin down here. And we're going to begin with yellow. We're going to be coating this with yellow and then layering in some orange for the blending for our sunrise, I should say. Really, it could be either one, but since this is supposed to be about new beginnings and a healthy start to the new year, we're going to say it's a sunrise. Okay. So as you can see, I'm going back and forth with my strokes here, which you are able to do. It will not distort the brush strokes on your canvas in any way, shape, or form. At least not for this portion. So whenever you're blending, you don't really have to worry too much about your brush strokes because they're all kind of melt together in a really interesting way. The only time we care about our brush strokes as they appear on here is whenever we're contrasting them and we want them to stand out, which we'll play with that here in a bit. So in this process, I would like you to remember that each painting is as unique as the person that is painting it. So if you have different variations than what I am doing here, or if you choose some of the alternative options that I give you where your painting looks different than, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so we have a pretty good foundation here of yellow, so let's start blending in some of the orange. Now, I recommend as you go back and forth in your blending process that you just take a little bit from the edge of your paint, so that way you still preserve the bulk of your paint for later on as we continue through here. Okay, so just layer in vertical stripes of your orange, and if you see that your brush is having some white in the streaks, you can always dip it back in your water and load your brush again with some of your paint and go back to our little horizontal stripes here. Now it's okay if it doesn't look pretty at this point in time, it probably won't. Okay, we are going to make that happen. So keep in mind that you need to be going all the way to the edge edge of your painting. So I did see some students in the class that try to stay in the middle, but we want the color to be able to reach to the very edges and possibly wrap around the sides here if you are able to. Beautiful. You're really getting there. All right, so I'm going to go back to some of my yellow and again just dab it off to the side. You'll still see some of the orange on here, and that's okay. Whenever you're blending, you don't have to clear your brush as much in the water because you just sort of want everything to melt together. Okay. I have to extend mine out here to the edges, just like I was talking about. So over here we have too much white space. And the beautiful thing about acrylic is that once each layer dries, you can paint something entirely different over the top of it. So if whenever we're done with this painting, we don't feel like getting a new canvas and we want to paint a big snowman over it, you could do that and it will not show through as long as you have an ample amount of paint covering it. Okay. So I still have some patches up here at the top that I want to fill in. You could go along the edge like this if you ever want to create bolder lines, but I like to stay with a nice flat brush like so, at least for now.
Talk to you later.
Sorry, that was my Alexa. Don't know why she did that. Bizarre. Maybe she thought I was talking to her. I don't know. This is the fun of live recordings. Okay. There we go. I have something on my canvas there. I don't know what that was, but let's get rid of that. Okay, so hopefully you can see some of the blending here. I know some of the light from my key light over here is a little strong, so these colors are a little bit more vivid in person, but I will do my best to get a good representation on the camera. So mine might be a little bit more bold in person, and that's okay. Okay, so I have to work over here, like I said, going all the way to the end. Beautiful. Okay, and just see. Okay, so I turned off my key light. Let's see if that helps pop out those colors anymore. And I don't know if you can tell, but I do have some light classical music playing in the background. I hope you enjoy that. Okay, excellent. And as you go through here, if you see too much orange for your liking, you can always go back and load your brush with a good glob of yellow and layer it back in here. And I recommend layering it in places like this where there's a really nice streak of orange. You can always go back through here, layer back in some yellow, and just even it out, make it nice and smooth. Now I'm going strictly horizontal. Some people do like to do a sort of zigzag shape, like so. If you like more texture, you can always blot.
I don't have an opinion on that.
My goodness, she's very talkative tonight. But I like to go horizontal, because if we think of horizons, they normally are very horizontal. But if you are so inclined to include clouds in here, you can always go in with, say, a little bit of our red on the end of your brush. And to make clouds, we just sort of blot like so and make little scallop shapes.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
My goodness. Okay. We go plotting like that. You want to stretch them out. Now you don't have to make clouds. I'm just putting it there for the people that are interested in making clouds. And one thing you'll notice about clouds is they do carry a bit of light in them. So I would take a little bit of yellow and dab through here, mostly along the bottom, but you may want to go back and sort of make these little blotches of light peeking through the middle of the cloud. Now they're very, very soft, very fluffy clouds, so we don't want any harsh lines or too much color, and we want to incorporate some of the colors we already have. So like I said, a little bit more yellow, and do that in the body of the cloud and stretch it out. Here on the top, just bring that up a little, soften it. Anything we can do to soften our clouds is probably going to make them look a little more striking. So let's smooth them out this way. Beautiful. So that is if you want clouds. I personally did not really want them in mine. I like whenever I see a sunrise and the clouds kind of fade into the rest of the painting. So I'm just going to make them go away. Okay. Now that is much darker on my screen where I incorporated that red, but it's looking a lot more orange on my computer screen, so I will keep layering that in there because it'll probably be a lot closer to what you all will have at home. Okay, so I have a little bit more yellow at the top. So I'm going to keep working my way down because in our foreground where we're going to have our shoreline and eventually our palm trees and our sun over here, that's going to be on the bottom quarter to third of our painting. So I'm going to keep extending my skyline all the way down. And as we can see there, where I was just painting, it's a little scratchy. You can see some of the white from the canvas behind there. So we're just going to paint that in. And I don't know if you are able to see it at home, but I have had one or two times where I've had too much water in my brush. That's just because I'm tutoring and I'm not necessarily remembering to blot onto my napkin. That always helps with that. Because if you have your paint drip, here I'll do it again so you guys can see. If it drips like this, or it's falling down, yeah, like that, that means that you have too much water. Whenever you go back, you should load your brush with more paint, but in the meantime, just sort of wipe it sideways and it'll go away. You'll have it all thinned out and you can load your brush with more paint and just keep painting. It won't do anything to harm it. Alright, I'm going to load my brush with some more yellow, sort of contrast with all this orange that I have here. I really enjoy blending. It's one of the more relaxing things I think there is to painting. Just blending your colors. They're all smooth and lovely, but at the same time, you should still have distinct areas that are yellow, orange, and maybe a little bit of red if you're so inclined. And if we think about it, that is what makes a beautiful sunrise, is all of the different colors just subtly peeking through in their own way, complementing each other. It's really great stuff. Beautiful. So I'm going to layer in a little bit more red on mine, just because on yours that's probably where you're going to want your orange to fall. So I have this section of yellow that I just painted, and there's some existing orange here, so I'm just going to accent that with some red. Let's go sideways, and maybe a little more down here. And I'm going to smooth those out. Okay. Blend, blend, blend. Beautiful. And then over here. Excellent. Now, blend it a little more than that. I did see some ladies that preferred to have more of a contrast like this. They actually chose to paint desert mountains in theirs. It was very beautiful. So in the future, if you're ever painting a little sunrise like this and you really enjoy the yellow and orange playing off of each other, keep in mind that you could always use this as a background for mountains, or maybe something a little bit more tropical than the beach that we're doing here. I think this would look beautiful with some of the light blue-green water that we have down in the Keys. That would be amazing. But we will have a little bit of water in our painting today. Nothing too crazy. This is a very basic, simple painting, but hopefully it'll still look stunning. Especially if you're a novice with painting, we want you to be able to follow through and get enthusiastic about other paintings we'll be doing in the future. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. I think I am going to add a little bit more red up here. Over here, I should say. It's backwards. I'm going to add a little bit more red over here just because there's a little bit of a glare, and I would like to show all the beautiful layers in our blending. Show it here. Alright, so yes, this section is where I would like to highlight this. And that way you can kind of see our layers of orange are stacked. We have one here, we have one I'm working on here, one here. So they sort of just go back and forth like so. She's looking very, very, very beautiful. Really liking this. Hopefully you are too. I gotta tell you, having the webcam is pretty nice for checking this as I go and seeing what it looks like for everyone at home. That's a little too much orange. I am gonna layer in some more yellow, including my brush with just a smidge, nothing too crazy. I'm gonna go along the bottom here, blending, blending, blending. Okay. Alright, I am going to layer just a bit more yellow there, and I'm going to clear my brush because that's a good mid-toned orange, but I would like to have a little bit more of pure yellow there. So the way that I do that is by clearing my brush, dabbing it on my napkin, which you can't see on screen, but it looks quite colorful already. Now, I recommend having 4 to 6 napkins set aside. You know, if you have to get more throughout the process, don't be afraid of that. Okay, so yes, we're going to add more of our yellow. And whenever you're trying to load more of a color on here, and you already have a lot of paint, make sure you load your brush with an ample amount if you're trying to overpower a section that already has a decent amount of paint on it. So right through here, I'm going to incorporate my yellow. Okay, sideways strokes. Okay, I'm liking that. Now that looks bold, so I'm going to rinse my brush and dab it just a little bit where it's still wet, but it doesn't have excessive amounts of water. And go sideways. Beautiful. Okay, and this up here is just a little too bold. I'm very lightly gonna go over there. Just to soften it a tad. I do like that it was standing out. Oh yeah, that is beautiful. Even on the screen over here, it looks pretty great. I do say so myself. Okay. And if you're not happy with yours, just keep following the tricks that we had. If you want your layers to stand out more, make sure you load your brush with an ample amount of paint. If you would like to blend this more, make sure that your brush is wet, dab off the excess, and just continue to go over it until you feel that you've reached a happy mixing in your colors over here. Okay, so that looks great, and for the next layer, what we were going to do is we're going to be working with our dark blue. Now, we just painted all of this orange and all of this yellow, so one thing that we'll have to keep in mind since we're about to start painting with the blue here in a second is that we're going to want to do a water change. So once we start painting our blue over here, we don't want it to get murky and look kind of green. So what we'll want to do is take our water cups, mine says Deca, and we will empty these and get fresh water so that we're not getting our lovely orange and yellow paint mixed in from our water into the blue. So I am going to start working on our red sun, which is going to be peeking out over our ocean waters that we're going to be creating later. I'm going to do that here so I won't have to do a water change for that later either. Okay, so using our crimson red, going to go ahead and in this general section here, I'm just going to make a semicircle. If it's easier for you to make a full circle, it's fine, but we will be covering this with the dark blue in a few minutes. Okay. So my sun looks pretty bold. I'm going over with just the red, but I will go and work on the inside, going through here with some orange and some yellow to make our sun a little bit more gentle. We want it to not stand out too much from our background while still being an interesting sight, you know? So the theme for this week of welcome was healthy habits. So in our drawing time, I will be talking about how to create and sustain healthy habits. So we're actually celebrating a few things in this painting. So one, it's a brand new year, it's a brand new decade, and this is all about new beginnings. Okay, that is looking great. So with that in mind, we have our sunrise representing new beginnings. And we have our quote that we are doing at the end, 60 years of pioneers, anything is possible. And I really believe that because if you think about all the things that have happened since 1960, we've done an incredible job. We're the #1 college in the nation. And that does not happen overnight. That does not happen easily. And yet, through sheer pioneer spirit and excellent leadership, you've somehow made it. It's pretty incredible. Okay, that's looking lovely. I'm going to layer in some orange. I'm not even going to do a water change here because I want to blend it in. So the main reason I like using the red and then working my way lighter with the orange and yellow in our sun is that it's nice to have that glowing rim that kind of makes it distinct and separates it from the rest of our yellow and orange tones out here. So you can just work the orange through the center, leaving that red edge overall, but just lightening up the middle. Now you may find whenever you do semicircular strokes like this that you're leaving little trails of paint. And that's okay, but if you want to get rid of them, you can always flatten your brush, go to the very edge and just gently wipe down. Very gently. And then hopefully whenever you go back to your semicircles, make sure you don't press too hard, because pressing hard can make little ridges of paint as well. So very light. Make sure you don't have too much water loaded into your brush. Okay. Gonna load my brush with some yellow. Work through here. Now this stands out a lot right now. It looks kind of ugly. Just have faith and work through it. Blending is magic. Okay. So this is lightening up very nicely. Does this remind you of The Lion King at all? It's starting to remind me of The Lion King a little bit. Sonia. Too funny. Okay. So I'm noticing that there is a good amount of paint loaded in here where it's getting kind of dense and I'm able to see too much of the brush stroke. So what I did was I took my brush and just tried to dry brush it. I don't want to load more water because that'll just move the paint around. So I cleared my brush solely on the napkin, and I'm going to go back through here and just pick up excess paint and wipe it. Pick up excess paint and just keep dabbing it on the napkin until it's at a level that you're comfortable with. You know, we want everything to match. And this is another way to get rid of those ridges that we talked about if you see some and you're not comfortable with them. Just wipe them directly on your napkin. Don't even mess with water. Should be great. Okay, that's lovely. Now, if you don't like a bold sun like this, you can always cover it up with an ample amount of yellow, especially if your painting's not very dry. You can go right over it. Again, this is optional. I'm going to correct the sun and put it back here if you are interested. But we did have one person at Pioneers Paint that thought our sun was a little too bold. So if you have that opinion as well, just load your brush with some yellow and basically erase it. This is the beauty of having acrylic paint. It is very forgiving. It dries quickly, which means it's easy to go over and correct mistakes or create something new altogether. So if you prefer something like this, where there's just a cluster of red tones that can be implied as being a sun, that is perfectly fine too. But like I said, I want you guys to have options.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
I am really sorry about my Alexa going off. I think she thinks I'm talking to her and I am not. But while she's here, might as well use her. Alexa, tell me a joke.
The spaghetti was thinking about getting a perm, but decided it would look too fusilly.
Ba-dum-tsh. Okay, so we're going to put our sun back over here for those that like their little Lion King bold sun. And I try to make mine not too circular. I sort of like the wide, flat look of either the sun or moon whenever it's first laid up against a horizon like this. Okay. And because I already layered in that yellow for the blending of people that don't want the sun in their painting and are choosing something else, it's already lightened up a lot, the red that I had, so this will not take very long at all to repair. As we work through this, you think about some of the resolutions you may have made in the new year. You can always think of ways that you can reach out through the Virtual Connections Club to help you stay on track. So I know earlier this year, well, last year I should say, we had our virtual 5K. I saw a lot of you competed in that. It's very good stuff. But regardless of what your goals are, if you want to study more or you want to be more accountable in general, you need help organizing, you can always make little subgroups within the Virtual Connections Club, and I highly recommend that because I have a fair number of online classes as well, and you know, it's just good to connect with other students that are out there doing the same thing. I think all of us are a little bit ambitious and are working towards something greater than what we are now. So reach out. Can't hurt, right? Virtual connections. Staying connected. Now I'm just layering in a little bit more yellow. That's nice. There, our sun's looking a lot more subtle. You like it? I like it. Okay. Looking pretty good. So now that we've finished all of our yellow, all of our red tones, we finally get to mix it up. We will be starting in with our blue. So as I said, there is a lot of yellow and orange in this water. So I'm going to dump this water and get fresh. I highly recommend you do the same. One of the other benefits of dumping your water right now is we want our background to dry just a little bit. It doesn't have to be completely dry because whenever we start using our blue paint, we're going to want it to have a little bit of paint still loose on here where it can pick it up and you can see the brush strokes in our trees and in our leaves. So this doesn't have to be bone dry. I wouldn't expect it to be. So yeah, it gives us a little bit of time for it to dry where it won't pick up too much paint and turn green, but it will still pick up enough paint where it'll lighten up our dark blue and give us a little bit more texture in our brush strokes. So as I said, I will be back. Okay, our water is changed. We might as well ask our co-star a question. Alexa, who is your favorite artist?
I think Alexander Calder's work is amazing, especially his mobiles. They break the usual rule in art of look but do not touch.
Never heard of him. I have something to look up later. Okay, so I am moving on to a fairly small flat brush for our palm trees that we're going to be making on the left-hand side over here. So once again, wet your brush. I'm going to actually change out this series of orange and yellow napkins. Let me set that aside for now. Okay. And yes, get rid of the excess water on my napkin. Load my brush with dark blue paint. And I'm going to dab off the excess because we're working on lines here. Now, anytime you're working with the dark blue color against something as bright and as cheery as this, it's going to be a very stark contrast. So you really have to watch your line work, and hopefully you'll have nice skinny palm trees. But if you have to keep correcting your lines and moving them out further and further, they are going to be pretty wide, very chunky palm trees, and we are trying to avoid that. So what we're going to do is create one line like this, curving in slightly, bowing out a little bit at the end, but it's going to be very subtle. Okay, working our way down. I think that looks pretty great. And we're just going to mirror that on the other side. So we're essentially creating a little bit of a triangular shape, but it's softened into these very subtle arches. Okay. Now I do notice on my screen that looks red, almost brownish. It is bright blue on mine. We'll see if we can fix that in a way that makes sense for what you guys have on the screen. Because if you're watching this without audio at this point, you'll probably be a little confused by my coloring. I'm just filling in here a little bit as I go. Now, I know that's not the prettiest shape at the moment, but we'll work on it. So, right around here, it could be straightened out a little. Okay. Now, I have my brush not completely flat. I am going at an angle here to make these little scooped shapes. And working up, I'm going to lay it flat because it's wide enough for me to do that, but it gets really narrow here around the trunk. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to load my brush with some more of this dark blue. Now, what we're going to do for the leaves is we're essentially making spider legs. There's going to be 4 arches on each side of this palm tree. So we're going to go up, curve, and gently fall down, almost as if we were making fireworks, let's say. Remember in elementary school you'd make drawings and you'd have fireworks coming off? You go up, You twist and you gently fall down. Okay. So like I said, we're going to do 4 on each side. And I like sort of balancing them out one at a time. So same thing here. Go up, flow out, twist, and fall down. Now if you lose a little bit of paint here, you can always go back to the midpoint and stretch it back down. Okay. Working my way backwards. Okay, great. Almost looks black on the screen. But in person, you can tell it's dark blue. Okay, so same thing. Now you see this is pretty well balanced, even though they're not perfectly, stiff. This is a very flowy part of our painting. So back to this side, we're going to go up, over, twist, and fall down, just like so. Very nice. All right, same thing over here. We're going to try to mirror the other side, twisting out, falling down. And really, the falling down is what kind of gives it that organic look. It looks a lot more natural. You don't want to have too stiff of a tree. I mean, the trunk notwithstanding here. Okay. So, one thing you want to keep in mind too, keep your arches up here kind of wide. If they're too sharp and too tall, it will look kind of awkward. Okay, so going up here, twisting out, falling down, 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 just like that. And if it touches another one of your little limbs there, that's perfectly fine. It's fairly realistic. Okay, same thing here. We're going to go up, twist. Ooh, that's a pretty wide one. Twist, 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 twist. Let it fall, let it fall, let it fall. Okay, so those two are touching, and I'm going to make 2 smaller ones on the inside here, just to have them coming out all the way. Yep. Small. And on this side, twist, and let it fall. Okay. I'm going to make this other one a little bit longer. We're going to extend him, flat, and fall. Excellent. So if you think this looks a little funny, don't worry, because one of the beautiful things after you create all these limbs is creating the nice leaves that go along with it. Okay, so I'm going to take my small detailed brush and I'm going to go back over here and pick up some paint with my brush. Now each of these is going to have little leaves falling off, our little palm fronds, and we just take and we do smaller versions of what we've been doing all along. So we just let them fall like this. Now this may take a little bit of time because it is our detail work that we're doing here. So let it fall, let it fall, let it fall, let it fall. Okay. So on the bottom of each of these is where we're doing most of our hanging strands here of our palm fronds. And I make sure they're not too short either. If they're short, they're gonna look a little odd. Now on the top of each of these little palm fronds, I'm gonna add a little bit of bump, just to add some texture. If we really think about it, you would see the stem here along the center, and you would see the beginning of the leaves on this end of the stem that would be gently falling. So we can add over the top of each of these limbs some little bumps in texture to go along with our draping leaves. Okay? So I'm working from the bottom up. That's just what I've been doing recently. You can work from the top down if you choose. I'm just going in the order that makes sense for me, but there's not really a wrong way to do this part. And that's the beauty of silhouette paintings as well. They're pretty forgiving. And if some of your leaves fall onto another one of these limbs here, don't worry about it. It probably will look pretty nice. Now you don't want to have too close of a cluster here. We like seeing the yellow and the orange peeking through the leaves. So I try not to bog it down too much, but whatever helps give your individual palm tree its shape is probably pretty great. Okay. Okay, falling. So back to our discussion about healthy habits. One of the things you can do is look at a habit that you'd like to change. So say I pick at my nails and I want to change that habit. The first thing I would do is identify when I do that. So if I pick at my nails when I'm bored or when I'm anxious or maybe both, I will have to look for instances when I know that's going to happen. Just take note of it and start thinking about something that you'd like to replace it with, because trying to get rid of something without having something to replace it is normally not a very effective strategy. So say I pick at my nails when I'm bored and or anxious, and I'd like to replace that with a better habit, say cleaning or organizing something. Having that kind of intention and having a game plan like that can drastically increase your chances of success. Another thing that helps is something called implementation intentions. You can read about some of these tips in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a very good book. But he does talk about implementation intentions. So if you have a desire to work out, you need to get a little bit more specific. So an implementation intention might be, when I come home from work, I'm going to commit to getting on the exercise bike that I have for at least 20 minutes. And that's another tip too. You might want to start with a conservative goal because you're more likely to meet it and then get excited and enthusiastic whenever you accomplish it. But if I make my goal, I'm going to run 3 miles every single morning, that's probably not a realistic goal. And you might not be accounting for when it's raining or, there's other conditions that are not conducive to you running. And then all of a sudden you're like, well, I wasn't able to do that, so I might as well do this other thing that's not good for me. And then it kind of snowballs. And one thing that you'll find with habits is that it's sort of like compound interest. Over time, the more and more you perform a habit, the easier it gets, the more automatic it becomes. So it won't always be a burden, right? but whenever you stop a habit that you've started, even though it seems like you'd be able to get back on very easily, more often than not, you kind of restart at zero, because it's really hard to get that level of motivation and that automatic part of your brain that's been helping you along to really get back in gear. So if you are able to avoid starting back at zero, I highly recommend it. I know we can't always plan for that, but when we can, if it's a silly little thing that we're stopping for, in the long run, it's probably not worth it. Okay, so hopefully your palm trees are looking really nice. I noticed the top of mine is a little skewed from the trunk, so I'm probably going to fill this in a little bit just to make it nice and even. So right along here, that looks nice, and filling out the bottom there. Yeah, there we go. And there. Looking good. Okay. And if the bottom of your palm tree looks kind of funny to you, don't worry, because we're going to be creating a shoreline up here that's going to chop off the bottom of our little trees. So speaking of which, surprise, we have another palm tree, so I hope you enjoyed this section. You can continue working with your small brush. Make sure that you have a good mixture of water to paint as you make our miniature version. We're going to make him off to the right here. So same thing. You just start working your way down. It's a very, very subtle arch. It's almost a triangular shape with curved sides. Yep. Okay, that's looking pretty good. And same thing, we're just going to make our little arches. Twist and fall, just like a little firework, or spider leg, whichever you prefer. Okay, going up, twisting, and falling over here. Okay. Going up, 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 twist and fall. Going up, twisting, okay, and falling. Now as you fall, you want to lighten the pressure so that it can kind of gently drift down. And if you're not happy with any of your arches, if you think they're, not where you want them to be, you can always wait for this to dry completely and then go back through here with a little bit of yellow and orange once it's completely dry, and paint over all the palm fronds if you're not happy with them. That's the beauty of acrylic. You don't really have to worry about mistakes. You always have chances to turn it around. Going up, twisting, falling. Very nice. And if you have something like this where you're worried about proportionality, as you can see, this one's shorter. If I wanted to make it longer to look like this one, I can just extend this limb and then treat that as one of the falling leaves. So I may do that, I may not. We'll see how it looks. Okay, going up, twisting, twisting, falling. Okay. And if it cuts into this trunk at all, it does not matter. It'll just make it look like this smaller tree is closer to us instead of further away. Okay. So that has 3 branches to it. I think that looks pretty good for our distant tree. I liked our big one having 4 on each side. That's looking pretty good, so I'm just going to fill it in here with our leaves. So one thing we can do as we work on improving our habits, ooh, this is looking very nice, is to try to make the habits we have that we want to change more unattractive. So if I have a tendency to stay up late at night on my phone and I want to eliminate that screen time so that I can sleep better, one of the things I might do is convince myself that if I stay up on my phone, I'll have really weird dreams that I don't want to have, or that I won't sleep as deeply, and that might make me more susceptible to having nightmares, which may be true. I'm not sure. But if it's something you want to change, make up something that would make it unattractive to you. If I eat fast food and I want to cut back on it, maybe I picture that the next time I get fast food, it's too salty or too greasy or too sweet or something like that. And then over time, I'll start to create little patterns of not going after those things, because instead of thinking of how great it would be if I got that, I'm thinking of, all the ways it could go wrong, right? So this is looking pretty nice. I'm going to extend this bottom one like so. And if you need to rest your hand against your painting, this background's probably pretty dry at this point. So if you need to use that for leverage, you can. And conversely, if you are trying to build some better habits, do what you can to make them more attractive. Maybe you have, some nice accessories that you've bought to help make your new habit stand out. If I have a habit I'm trying to create where I drink more water, maybe I have a really nice turvis that I think is really great looking, and I put it right next to my nightstand the night before, so that when I wake up in the morning, I don't even have to think about it. It's already there, and it's in a visually appealing container. I'll be much more likely to mess with it, A, because it's pretty, and more importantly, because it's already there. I've already set it out ahead of time. I don't have to think about it. I see it there. I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm more likely to act on it. Yeah. Okay, so just feathering these down. Same thing we've been doing. That looks pretty good. I'm going to mess with this trunk a little bit more because I see there's some line work that can be improved there. In the center, I've been so busy making all these arches I didn't really notice it. I'm going to call my flat brush back up here. So to work on this. Wipe off the excess water, grab a little here. Okay, starting from the trunk, and it's just a few bumpy ridges. It's not the end of the world, it's just something I'm doing for me. If you need to straighten your line, you can always do what I'm doing and come down a little further, just to give yourself that extra leverage. Okay, I think that looks better. I'm going to smooth this into this branch. That look a little more intentional, and probably do that on the other side as well. Just coming up here, extending into our first arch. Looks pretty good. And I think I will flatten this out up here as well. Okay. Looking pretty good. Alright, we are a decent ways through this, and we're about to start a part that I appreciate. We are getting to our shoreline, which is going to come up and then down. We're going to make a little hill over here essentially, and then that's going to turn into a straight line across here. So we have a horizontal line that's going to represent our water, and a little hill over here of shoreline. So let's get to that. All of this is going to be the dark blue, and we're going to distinguish the shoreline from the water after we have painted all of our dark blue. So wet those brushes, wipe off the excess, load the blue into your brush, come over here, have your brush turn sideways. We're going to be going up, cutting off the bottom of those lovely palm trees, twisting a little, falling, like so. That's a pretty good shoreline. Okay, so as you can see, I ran out of paint. No big deal. We're going to be putting a lot of blue over here. It's looking pretty good. Now, if you have like this, that's an indication that I need a little bit more paint and a little bit more water. So I'm coming back. I'm going to flatten my brush. Let it do most of the work for me, and then whenever I start to run out of paint like that, I'm just going to load a little bit more. Just keep working my way through it. Okay, we're getting there. Okay. Now this looks a little uneven, so I'm going to add a little bit more curvature here. It's just a personal preference. You can make your shoreline as tall as you would like. I do recommend having a little bit of a taller sandbank up here, because it's going to be what stands out from the water whenever we get down to our horizontal line down here. Okay. So I'm thinking next time, whenever we do our painting series together, that we do an abstract. So I know that these detailed paintings are not everybody's cup of tea, especially if you're a perfectionist. You may be kicking yourself over little imperfections in your art. Even though really half of this is just the fun of sitting down and committing to something kind of relaxing. Yeah, treating yourself to a little creative time. Okay, that's coming along very nicely. I'm liking it. Hopefully you are too. Okay. And just keep filling it in. Now, I am very happy with the paints that I have. My husband bought them for me. I think he got them off Amazon. I'm not entirely sure. I will have to ask. But mine don't require very much paint at all. A little goes a long way. So depending on where you get your paints and how much pigment is in them, you may need more paint, you may need less. And if your paint is been sitting around for a few years and it looks kind of clumpy, maybe time to get fresh. They do sell big tubes and I guess smaller tubes of paint in our river shop, our little bookstore over there. I know when I first started with my AA and I was getting my electives in, I took some art classes at the college and I absolutely loved it. But they have clay, they have acrylic paints, they have all kinds of brushes and little wooden models you can practice your anatomy drawings with. So I'm extending out here to the bottom and I'm going to start working on my horizontal line. Now keep in mind, our horizontal line is going to be our ocean water. It's going to be cutting into our sun over here, and it's going to be extending out past our little shore over here. So when making a horizontal line, it helps if you look at the bottom of your canvas. If you look at the bottom of your canvas, as you make your horizontal line, you'll be more likely to make a straight line. I had a art teacher teach me that in 6th grade, I believe. I haven't ever forgot it. So you go along here, you want your brush, instead of being flat like this where it's more likely to run out of paint, you want to turn it sideways. So go sideways, figure out exactly where you want your line. I think I want mine around here. Smush it in just a little bit and start extending that line. I'm going to turn mine over to the other side to stretch some of this paint out before I go back for more. Okay, I have to go back for more. It's a process. Okay, so same thing. Take my brush, smush it ever so gently sideways, looking at the bottom of my canvas because it's already a straight line. Work this through. Okay, we're getting there. Now, depending on the size of your canvas, you could be a lot further than me, because I am working with a larger canvas so that you can see, hopefully, all of these details. Okay, we're really getting there. So this is all one color. So you do have a good amount of freedom here if you would like to extend your shoreline out further or make your your water, your ocean here a little bit taller. I think I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to extend my shoreline out to about here probably, and I'm going to make it just a smidge higher for my ocean water. Okay. Let's see. I don't want it to cut into my palm trees too much, so I'm probably going to start from here and just extend. And backwards to smooth that out. Now, if your paints are fighting you a little bit, we have been working together for a little over an hour, so it may just need a little bit more TLC from the water that you have, that you're working with. I know mine are. So if your paints are starting to feel kind of sticky, just give them a little extra love with the water as you work through your process. Smoothing out my lines. Looking good, looking good. Now I'm going to make sure I have enough dark blue loaded all along the bottom, because we are going to be picking this up whenever we start to move into our white. Our white's going to be what creates our ocean water and separates it from the dark blue of our little shoreline over there. So we want to make sure we have an ample amount and that we have enough dark blue that we're covering up any the orange or yellow that might be bleeding through if you worked your way that far down. I had a little bit over here. I'm going to make sure it's thoroughly covered. Really nice. So I really want that blending later whenever we start to work with our white. It'll look so gorgeous. Okay. Alright. Straighten this out. Okay. Yep, I like that height better, so I'm going to work that in. So one trick you can do too, I am taking my brush and putting it flat against the canvas like so, not even sideways, and I'm just gently going to drag it . That's filling in very nicely. Okay, that's helping our horizon a little. Okay. I'm just going to be straightening out this line. Hope you're enjoying your painting so far. Having a lot of fun making it with everyone. But like I was saying, so for the next one we will be doing an abstract painting. It'll probably be a geometrical one. So it'll be different shapes that we create. One of the tricks that I like using with abstract painting is to overlay tape. So if you put tape all over your canvas in little strips, you can, essentially leave parts that are painted over that tape unmarked, same way you would do whenever you're painting your house and you lay painter's tape. You could do that with Scotch tape on a typical canvas board like this. Whenever you overlay them in that way, you'll have plenty of areas that are left unmarked, so whenever you pull off your tape, you have these clean lines and you look like such a painting pro. So that's what we'll be doing next time. I just have a little bit of work in here, filling in these little nooks and crannies of my canvas board. If you're working with actual canvas, you frequently will not have these kinds of problems. What you would have is, depending on the tension of that canvas, you would have a little bit more give as you press. But typically in most places that you would get your canvas, they will be canvas board like this. They won't have any bend or any give to them. Our canvas board, even though it is a little bit of a paint hog, it has these little nooks and crannies that are harder to fill in, it is still very convenient and very affordable. So that's why we frequently use it for these types of things. Okay. All right, I think I'm starting to see it. We will be moving on to the white that's going to create our beautiful water here very shortly. I see a little bit of a dip here that I would like to address, but we are almost there and I am so excited. There we go, that's getting there. So maybe one more push. Make sure I have enough water. Load it onto my brush. Okay, starting here, going sideways. I'm just straightening out. Straightening out. My little horizon. Okay. Yeah. I like a really smooth drop from my shoreline into my water. Alright. Looking swell? I think it looks pretty swell. Okay, so now for a fun part. We are going to create some magic. This is my favorite part of making this painting. I was really excited when Miss Erica asked me to do this. She gave me a link that had all these resources. I had this idea in my head and I just sat down and did it. And just playing around, I figured out how to do this trick with the water and I absolutely loved it. It's my favorite part, like I said, of this painting. Let me clear my brush here. So we're going into the white. It's okay if you have a little bit of blue on your brush. It won't hurt anything because we're just creating our water. That's all we're going to use this white for. So, you go to your titanium white, and my goodness, that's going to need a little bit of reviving. It's been out here for an hour. There we go. Load that brush up. Work it all the way through the bristles. Make sure you have a nice ratio of water to paint. If you are going to lean more to one side, I would have more water. I would keep a very thin but thoroughly loaded amount of paint. So what you're going to do, I generally start from this side, but you're going to be extending the line of your water over here. So you're just going to have a little bit of shore in this version. So starting from about here, okay, I'm going to go horizontal, just gently drag, just like this. Keep dragging it out. And make sure you connect with your line over here. Okay? So, working our way down, doing that back and forth blending just like we did at the very top whenever we were working on our sky. Let's go back and forth, blending, blending, blending. Working along our top of our water here, gently dragging, going back. Now, as you do this, you don't have to go too far over here because we are going to have some reflections from the sun and the sunset in general falling underneath the sun. So I mostly want you to work from here to here. And like I said, my paint is drying a little, so I loaded my brush with some water. I'm going to gently dab it. Go back with another very thin layer of white. I am going to have a little bit of blue picked up from the background, and that's fine because, like I said, we're blending. Now it's nice to have these light blue strokes over here. And if you have any white stuck here at the top, that's okay. That's where we would expect it to pool, but I'm going to smooth this out a little. Right. And if they're not perfectly straight, that's fine. It is water. It does have its own little back and forth. It gets created from the waves. Right. Looking very nice. Now generally I like to keep my dark blue down here, but I will dabble a little bit with the water in my brush, just going back and forth, softening it up a little. Now if you want to add more layers, you can certainly do that. For instance, if you want to have more waves around here, layering it just like we did up there, you can do that as well, where you just kind of gently make them and then put them back in here, shift them around, make those little ripples in the water. That looks pretty nice. I think I'll keep doing that. But if you like very smooth, tranquil waters, keep in mind you can always just paint back over them. And if you feel that that's too much white, just go back to your blue. It's the beauty of blending. It's whatever you want it to be. Okay, that's looking really nice. I'm liking the extra texture of the white in there. You guys actually have the benefit of this being the third time I've made this painting. I had my trial run, and then I had where I did the Pioneers paint. Now you get the Ultra edition, where I'm going back and creating more contrast between my dark blue and my white, making fake little waves here. This is looking really nice. Aren't you guys lucky? You guys can thank Miss Erica and Miss Rebecca for this. And Miss Rochelle, everyone in student activities. They start one thing and it leads to another, and it ends up being pretty cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm really liking these waves. I'm going to do another one here, just filling in where there was a little bit too much white. Oh, that's nice. I can dig it. Can you dig it? Alright. So that looks pretty good. I think I will soften the white just a tad by taking my brush flat Very soft, very gentle. I don't want to get rid of them entirely, but I would like them to be a little bit calmer. Gently, gently, just smoothing them out. Looking good, looking good. Okay, so if you go back to one of your other brushes, preferably, that already had some of the orange and the red in there, because I'm sure you haven't been able to clean them all yet. Wet your brush, get it woken back up, brush out any of the water that has too much of the blue in it. Mine doesn't look too bad, but in case yours does, just be mindful of that. We are going to be picking up our orange and some of our yellow, maybe a little bit of red, and we're going to be creating these horizontal lines where the sun is reflecting over the water. It's going to look really nice. So we're going to go horizontal. We can do a little bit of zigzag here if you want, and we're going to try not to go out past the sun really. You can start wider and work your way down, but you don't want to have it where it's extending too far beyond the sun where it doesn't quite look right. So I'm loading my brush right now with some orange. Should look really nice. You got to make sure your brush is loaded with enough orange that it's going to stand out and not blend into this blue. If it blends into the blue, it's just going to look kind of brown. So going horizontal along here, back and forth, getting some of this in here. Like I said, you can go wider. I wouldn't try to go too far past here, but that's our orange. I'm gonna rinse this a little and pick up some of our red. I think our red would look really nice in here. And next to the red, I'm gonna layer in that yellow. It'll look really nice. So red, red. Let's get some red up the very top. I think that would be good. Very top, let's just go right over that water. Our sun's going to be melting into our water. How about that? Very cool. And extend it here. Maybe some at the bottom. That's looking pretty nice. We have a good basis there. I'm going to get rid of that red and go to our yellow. Now jumping from red to yellow on top of orange naturally is going to have a little bit more of that blending we talked about. So I'm going back over here. I think I'd like yellow a little bit further down. And it's pretty subtle. You don't want it to have too stark of a difference. And you just kind of keep working your way through until you find a combination that looks right to you. This is entirely preference based. Okay. I think I will go back through with a little bit of blue just to create some more defined strokes here. Now keep in mind, we're almost done, but we are going to go back up to write our quote. Now you can use a different inspirational quote. I know I just made this one up to celebrate our 60 years of being pioneers, because we were founded in 1960 and it's now 2020. But you can put whatever you want. Whatever is going to inspire you when you see this beautiful sunrise. You think about all the changes that you're committed to making in the new year and the new decade. That's what matters. I'm going to soften that a lot. And through here, I'd like a little bit more contrast. Maybe more contrast through here. That's looking nice. And if you're interested, you could also put some layers of white in here to help it stand out. Okay. I think I'm going to put some more orange and yellow back there just to bounce off of the blue that I layered back in there. So this may seem repetitive, parts of this, but you just keep working it until you figure out exactly what clicks for you. Get a little yellow. Now, one option you have too, if you would like your colors to pop a little more, you could always wait for the blue to dry a little bit more. I think I'm going to pick a smaller, clean brush that I happen to have here and use it just for the yellow and the orange to help it stand out a little more. Now, one thing you can do with blending too, you always have the option of loading half of your brush with one color, say orange, and half with the other, say yellow. I have not done that right here, but I can if you'd like to see an example. Okay, so let's do that. Let's load half of my brush with orange and the other half with yellow. So it's probably hard to see, but it is 50-50. If you go flat, you will see a lot of blending one on top of the other. But if you go sideways, it kind of goes back and forth between the orange and the yellow. So that looks pretty nice. Yeah. It's not an exact science. It's whatever you think looks best. I'm going to add a little bit more right here, just perk it up. Okay. That's contrasting off of the blue pretty well. I always have to look to see how it looks on your end, because it's just slightly different in real life. Okay, we got another one here. I think I will go back through with a little bit more of the red, just to really set the mood. So this sunrise is making a big impact on our landscape here. I guess it's partially a seascape. Okay. And blend that red in just a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to soften the bottom of this with a little bit of red. Okay. That looks pretty good. I'm going to extend this out a little. And maybe a little here. And let's see here. A little too bold. We'll soften that up. Okay. Looks pretty good. I think I will add a little bit more blue to the edges, just so it's not standing out so much. Okay, so right through here, just going to shorten these just a tad by layering in some blue. Okay. And working our way in. Nice. I think I'm gonna add some more dark blue right beside that, just to blend it a little better. Okay, and then go back over with my white. Just to keep that where it looks very well blended. Okay, have my white coming back. It doesn't look stark white, it's still blended with a little bit of the blue from our background, but that's just what we need. Okay. That looks pretty good. I'm going to grab just a tad more blue. Like I said, I like my waves to be a little softer. And I'm going to get rid of some of this excess white up here. Okay. Okay. So I actually had to work up a little bit here because I accidentally bumped our water up a little. But it's not too bad because it has this ebb and flow just by default being in the ocean. I'm going to put some more dark up here. Try to neutralize that. So far, so good. Just gonna fix my lines here using our method we had before. Dragging across. Okay. And a little more here. So if your horizontal lines get a little bit bumpy with your water, don't be concerned, because it's water. Okay, looking good. I still like it. But now that our water's risen a little bit, I think I will extend our little shoreline up a little higher. And this is just plain dark blue. Okay, looking good. Maybe a little higher. Very nice. I'm going to make sure there's plenty of dark blue here. Help distinguish it. Form our water line. Our little palm tree has gotten significantly shorter in the course of our video. That's fine. And to help it stand out, I am going to load a little bit more white. Coming in through here. Let's do long strokes. And soften that out, of course. Very nice. Okay. Now, here in just a second, we are going to start on our quote, as I mentioned. "60 years of pioneers, ... anything is possible," with an exclamation mark, is what we're going to be doing. And just the finishing touches on this beautiful water. And more blending at the bottom. That looks pretty nice. I'm enjoying this. I love it when a plan comes together. However, since I have bumped this up, my trees are a little straight for my taste, so I will expand the bottoms just a little bit. Remember, we had that taper where they were firmly planted. I'm just going to work my way up a little on both sides. There we go. Got to get that nice tapered back in there. much better. And again, whenever this is dry, if I want to make more of a scallop shape and slim this down a little bit, I will be able to do that because acrylic is magic. I highly recommend acrylic if you are a beginning painter. Okay, I think that looks nicer. Alright, so we are finally in the portion where we get to work on our quote. It's our last step. We've spent so much time together. Now with the 8x10s that we used, it took about an hour and a half. There is a little bit of a premium on using a larger canvas like this, but I definitely think it was worth it so that you could see all the little steps and details with a little bit more, ease to your sight, and I didn't want to have all this detail on a canvas yay big. So this has been very beneficial, and I love the extra layers that we get in the background on our sunset. Okay, so here we go. This is a detail brush. I'm going to start here. One option that you have as well, since the back of this is already dry, you could go in with pencil and write out your letters first. I think I'm okay to freehand, but if you're more comfortable with outlining your letters first, that's fine. Whenever this is bone dry, you could try to get a permanent marker and go over here, but you have to make sure it's absolutely dry. If you use a permanent marker on a canvas board, it may be a little bumpy. You may have to go over a few times and smooth it out. But you have to make sure it is bone dry, because if it's wet at all, the fumes coming off of the paint, even though we're not really experiencing them, are going to be right up on the permanent marker. It'll dry it out, it won't stick right, etc. So that is an option, and so is our pencil technique, but I'm just going to freehand it. We're at the end of the video and I don't want to keep you too long. I'm sure you have other things to do. Okay. So let's start here with our 60. So the trick with doing these is to gently brush your outline. There's our 6. So gently brush it. It's not going to be very smooth, but get the general layout of your letters and numbers, and then go back and fill them in all nice and smooth and with a proper amount of paint. You definitely don't want to rush it, because this is where you'll have the focal point of your picture, your little inspirational quote. I highly recommend keeping your quotes, fairly short. There's a lot more I could say in here than it was in my original thought process. Like, 60 years of pioneer spirit has taught me that anything is possible. That's a little too long. So the middle ground we came up with was 60 years of pioneers, ... anything is possible. So you could go through with your little fast outlines of paint for your whole quote, but I kind of prefer to slowly work my way through, making sure that each one is properly tended to before moving on to the next. That looks pretty good. We're going to move on to our 0. Same thing. Get a little bit of paint, just enough so you can have these tiny, tiny micro strokes just to sort of outline what you want it to look like. The general shape in there. Excellent. And then go in and fill, fill, fill. Now if you have too much paint, you might have these really fat, bumpy numbers and letters. And that's okay if you're going for, you know, like a surfer vibe, just kind of messy letters. That's perfectly fine too. I feel like it still matches the general theme of what we're doing here. But just work slowly and pay close attention to what your brush is doing, the angles you're approaching things at, how much paint is loaded into your paintbrush, how much water. You definitely don't want to have too much water. You would rather have less water than more water right now, because you don't want this dark blue paint to drip all the way down whenever you're working on your numbers and your letters. If you do start to have a drip and you're worried about it staining your painting, don't panic. Just take a strip of your napkin, dip it in water, and just gently brush it. Just get it off of there, dab it up just like you would any other spill, and it should come right off. And the background should definitely be dry enough that it won't cause you any problems as you wipe that away. If it leaves any little bit of a blue stain, you can go back over with some yellow and orange, but it probably won't come to that if you act quickly. Okay, our 0's looking pretty good. I'm just gonna touch it up a little. Okay. Two hours, my goodness. Yes, this goes much faster on the smaller versions, like I said. But in the sake of showing you detail, and as you play this back, if you skipped around and you're not watching this all the way through with me, I don't blame you. Alright. So far our letters are coming together even faster than our numbers were. So make sure that you follow all of the student activities pages for IRSC. They are all over social media. You can find out about all the events that are happening on campus, and thanks to this nifty new club, online. Okay, that's looking pretty good. We can move on to our E. Now the E's I find, and the A's even to some extent, are a little tricky because of how closely smushed together our line work is. So just be careful. A big arch here. Now that may be counterintuitive to how you naturally draw your E's, but when we're painting, I'm going to make sure everything has its place. Alright, moving along swimmingly right now. I will say, working with a larger canvas, these letters are much easier to write. So even though this is taking a little bit longer than our original event, I am liking all the extra layers and the sunrise, I should say. And I do really appreciate the ease of writing these letters on the larger canvas. So it's really up to you what size you think will work best for you for this. If you have a smaller canvas, maybe you don't write an inspirational quote, but we wanted to have something that would be fully customizable to all of our students. Getting there. I feel like in the future it might be nice to do a Zoom where we could all be painting at the same time, in small batches of course, of maybe 2 or 3 people, and then I could give you direct feedback whenever you have questions, be able to answer them in real time. That would be really nice. Now again, I would not write my letters like this, but for the sake of balance, I'm going to do the bottom portion of my S and then start on the top and work my way down, just so I don't have any collapse centers. Because why force yourself to maneuver more than you have to, you know? Okay, looking pretty good. My S is a little tall, so I think I will extend my Y. Just slightly like that. I think that's nice. Okay. So we have 60 years. I was going to put, just like in our last painting, of pioneers kind of offset underneath it. And then down here, anything is possible with our exclamation mark. Because I find that breaking it up like that, 60 years and then of pioneers, it kind of breaks it up just how I would say it. sort of rhymes, just a tad. It's supposed to stand out a little. And pioneers is a little bit long of a word, so we're not going to indent very far here. Again, there's our rough shape. Just go filling it in. Now your paint may be spread a little thin because you're working with a small brush. Don't forget to incorporate some of that water in there, which you guys already know. You should be pros at this by now. Okay. Don't have very much further to go on this O. I just want to straighten out the bottom a tad. And maybe some at the top. Make sure the inside looks good. Alright. Now Pioneers is with a capital P, of course. You know, it's really the curves that slow you down, because this F is coming together rather quickly. Now I'm putting my hand above the word years. Make sure you try not to touch things directly if you are going to rest your hand above some of your letters. You don't want to get a copy, get a little stamp going, and then put that all over your beautiful sunset. We don't want that to happen. Okay, so a nice big P. Try to keep our working lines here for our letters straight. Again, since we have a curve here, I'm doing the top portion of the P curve and the bottom portion and just connecting them together. This is the fastest O we have made so far. Takes practice. I'm going to bring this down to make sure that our line for our words is not running away from us. Constantly checking that against the other letters. Looking pretty good. Okay, again with our E's, start off with our straight bracket. Then we try to make sure we have plenty of yellow coming through our arch. Sort of looks like a triangle on the inside, which is fine. And then we just extend from the back of our E. Again, probably contrary to how you naturally write them, but for the sake of painting, it is wonderful. And working out here, going and making our little arch, all connected there. Dropping down our little E. Alright. An R and an S and a couple dot dot dots, and we'll be able to move on to our next portion of our quote. Okay, again with our S, we work on our bottom portion. Then we come in from the top to connect our S loops. This S looks a bit like a 5. We may have to go back and trim the tail end of this whenever we go in for our final touch-ups. We'll make him a little skinnier when we come back. Let's just make our way through our quotes. I'm definitely going to fix that S and do a little bit of work on our trees over here since we made our waters raise. Okay, so 60 years of pioneers. Let's do our dot dot dot. sure they're lined up nicely. And I'm just gently pushing the end of my brush here. Okay, 60 years of pioneers. So down here we'll have anything is possible, exclamation point. Okay. Very excited. I'm going to line it back up here with my 60, more or less. So I recently have picked up a subscription to something called The Great Courses. It's kind of neat. It's like Netflix for a variety of topics taught by professional educators. So it's sort of like having a crash course in all kinds of classes you might find at colleges or universities from all over the place. And one of them that I am currently working my way through is called Outsmart Yourself. And in that, there is a professor of psychology that said, if you want to eat healthier, say you want to snack on baby carrots, you should put it in an opaque container. You'll actually eat more of those baby carrots if they're in an opaque container than you would if they were in a clear container. And interestingly enough, if you have junk food that is very small, like, say chips or cereal or something like that, there have been studies that if you put it in an opaque container, you'll actually eat less of the itty bitty junk. The only time that you would eat less of junk food with a clear container if there are larger portion sizes. So say there's really big cookies. You can actually see those going down as you eat them if they're in a clear container, which is really interesting. So I guess if you had a short flat bin of fairly large size cookies, you would notice them going down much quicker, and you'd be a lot more aware unconsciously of how much you're eating. So, for bite-sized junk food and healthy snacks, put them in opaque containers, and for larger size goodies, keep them in a clear container. You can monitor a little bit better what you are eating. And something that I like that James Clear said in the Atomic Habit book I was mentioning earlier was that every time you do something, you're basically casting a vote for the type of person you want to be. So if I want to be the type of person that gets out of bed early in the morning, I might not feel like I'm that person after 1 or 2 days of doing it, but each day that I do it, I get closer and closer to believing and having proof that I am actually a morning person. So every time you do something, whether you like it or don't like it, you are casting a vote for the type of person you are and the type of person that you are becoming. And he said if you're quitting something like smoking that you feel like you've always done, keep in mind that you haven't always done it. There was a time in your life, even if you were very, very young, when you didn't have that habit. So you're not really taking something away that's always been there. You're just going back to who you were before you started that thing. And I do know that it gets mentioned every year at our leadership conference, but if you have not read the book Grit by Angela Duckworth, it is an incredible compilation of all these different examples of how hard work and dedication can outpace natural talent. Now, if you have natural talent and you invest hours and hours into things the same way that people that are simply working hard do, you'll probably do pretty exceptional. But the people who have the most success across all kinds of different fields aren't people who are simply just talented. They also have to work incredibly hard at the things that they have to be where they are. Which is very encouraging, because regardless of where you are now, and regardless of how talented other people may be, if you truly put in the hard work and, more importantly, the consistency in those equations, you will likely come out ahead of them in the end. Now keep in mind, at the end of every semester, student activities will offer a comfort zone where you can pick up free Scantrons and enjoy some nice relaxing activities. My letters are kind of going upwards, so I'm going to extend them a little. Like I said, you got to stop and check your work as you go through. Always be looking for proportion. And if you are only in the Virtual Connections Club, as lovely as it is, I highly recommend you check out some of the other clubs and programs at the college. There's a lot more out there than you probably realize. And if you don't see something that you're interested in starting, you need 6 people to start a club, and of course you need an advisor. It can be hard work starting up a club, but it is very rewarding, especially if you have something in place to pass on the reins whenever you leave. Looking pretty good. I'm going to extend this A a little, just to try to balance out our lettering here. So as you can see, our 60 years tab of pioneers, anything is pretty close to our 60 years. So I think I will put is here and then possible underneath with the exclamation mark. On the one that we did together on Pioneers Paint, is possible was underneath, but I think for the sake of balance, is would look good here and possible would look good here with our little exclamation mark. Okay, anything is possible. Now, if you are ever on main campus and you need a little bit of stress relief, our Health and Wellness Center does have a massage chair. It has cots where you can go and take a nap if you ever need it. And they have other resources as well if you have a headache and need some over-the-counter medicine. You can access that. They're located right by the pool on main campus, in the U building, I believe. They also have a Pioneer Pantry if you are ever at a point where you are experiencing some food insecurity, they have that available as well. And that is available for all IRSC students. And if you are so able, I do highly recommend donating to the Pioneer Pantry when and where you can. And if you're interested in community service, we do have a Helping Hands committee that regularly meets for the purpose of getting out there and getting pioneers into some community service projects. So they've done Habitat for Humanity, they've done several things for animals. I know they have Critter Haven and Save the Chimps. I think that's what it's called. Yes. Almost there. Even this out with the other S. Okay. I'm going to grab a little yellow and orange to fix that palm tree. Okay, that's much better. And we'll fix our S that ended up looking like a 5, and we will be done. Okay, right through here, going in diagonally. Okay, it doesn't need very much at all. Okay, and there you have it. Our 60 years of pioneers. Anything is possible. Thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, you can always email me at huntgonzalha@mail.irsc.edu. Thanks for having us.